One of the most complex issues in American higher education. I'm talking about the enrollment, disengagement, and low degree completion rates for African American males in college. Some voices in higher ed say part of the problem is a deficit orientation.
Why aren't our children being put first? What's the problem, Mr. Banks?
I think that really across this country, we still have not made education the #1 priority. I don't think that in far too many of our communities, our elected officials, our leaders have not prioritized education. We have not seen this investment in our young people as something that we see as ultimately something that represents the actual survival.
You know, you're paying for that piece of paper, you're not necessarily actually paying for knowledge or for an education. And all of the issues that, you know, pre-exist, you know, all the issues that are already there with the existing educational system are only compounded when you are black. They are magnified when you're black, right? So you're dealing with the already pre-existing issues of dealing with an outdated, broken system.
This guy, he's 25 years old, he's my age, and he's a grad student at the University of Missouri. His name is Jonathan Butler, and he is on a hunger strike. Butler believes that the president does not and cannot uphold the duties of his position, and he's pretty frustrated that it's come to this. But what is this all about? Well, here's a few examples of what's only happened within the past 3 months on Missouri's campus. First of all, there have been several recent instances of racism on the campus, like the student body president, who happens to be African American, being called the N-word by a group of men in a truck near campus. On a broader note, these are things we should all be talking about. We shouldn't be ignoring these issues or sweeping them under the rug. People shouldn't have to go on hunger strikes to bring attention to monthly hate crimes and an administration that always looks the other way. But here we are in 2015, and this is still happening.
Hi, my name is Marissa. When I was younger, I always knew that I wanted to go to college. And with the help of my aunt and my nana, we were able to make that possible. Now, I'm a junior studying mass communications at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, SIUE for short. These past 3 years have been an experience like no other. I've made great friends, and I've even been involved around campus. And I knew that school would be hard. I even knew that being a black woman in school would make things harder. But no one told me it would be this hard.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Williford. I'm 21 years old. I am a student at Washington University in St. Louis. I'm a senior studying applied linguistics and education. Someday I hope to affect education policy in the United States.
Nationwide, the black student retention rate remains at a dismally low 42%. That means that almost half of the black students that attend universities don't graduate. But why is that? Why is it so hard for minorities to pursue higher education? Studies show that the major factors that contribute to low retention rates among black students include lack of strengthening academic credentials, study habits and ambition within the community, lack of financial support, and an absence of a welcoming campus. In short, black students greatly struggle with financial, home, and campus support.
But do you think, there are factors within the community that we need to work on that are contributing?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that black folks relating to other black folks in higher education, I think that there is a point that even black folks don't know how to relate to each other. And that sometimes rises because of ethnic differences and socioeconomic differences, religious differences, and other differences within the black community. Not even just in the black community, but in the, across the nation as a whole. We say we value education a lot more than we actually value education.
I don't receive much support from my household. Neither one of my parents attended universities, so that makes it even that much harder to understand how much that means to me. Coming to school and supporting myself, and even working in retail, has shown me that family support is very essential to pursuing higher education, and most times it's taken for granted. My parents really don't understand how much a, "Hey, how are you doing?" or "Keep up the good work, I'm proud of you," really means to me. I can only imagine how those things would help me get through school. Having parents that didn't go through the same experience makes it that much harder for them to understand.
I do think that it's going to require a massive consciousness shift amongst Black folks in the United States and amongst all folks in the United States to really value education the way that it needs to be valued so that kids can do well in school, kids can do well at college, kids can do well in universities.
I just started noticing that there were all these scholarships for, for race.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, well, I don't qualify for any of those just because of the color of my skin.
How does that feel?
It kind of feels like I'm being discriminated against a little bit.
Currently, I'm supporting myself through school. So everything that needs to be paid for, bought, including loans, I have to pay for it out of my own pocket. I currently work at Target in St. Louis. And though that may not seem like a lot, it actually hinders my education. There have been countless times where I've had to choose between school or work. And considering that I have a phone bill, a car note, car insurance, and a school bill to pay for, work usually wins. That goes without saying that finances are probably the biggest part of why minority students have such a hard time pursuing higher education. But I know it's not just me. 69% of African American students reported that they dropped out because of high loan debt, as opposed to the 43% of white students that have reported the same. Unfortunately, minority students are seen as having the most financial support from the government in order to pursue a college education. But here are the facts. 96% of all scholarships are available to white students. However, white students are 40% more likely to receive those scholarships. A study done has shown that 65.2% of all private institution scholarships are given to white students, only leaving 11.9% to Black students. The average Pell Grant given to white students stands at a whopping $6.4 million, as opposed to the $3.5 million given to minority students. So no, we do not receive all of the financial aid. Contrary to popular belief, we barely receive any financial aid.
Definitely say that finances are intrinsically linked to the difficulties that minority populations, ethnic minorities face with pursuing higher education. I think it's pretty well known that race and socioeconomic status are very much tied to one another in this country. It's what folks in the field of education would call, at least in my mind, the educational debt. I just like to know it as the achievement gap, but I think that the educational debt captures it in a little bit more holistic sense. It's the idea that because of the extreme disenfranchisement that ethnic minorities in the United States have faced since before the inception of this country, there is, as a result, a huge gap between different ethnic populations. Hispanic kids at the bottom, and mostly white and Asian kids at the top. And of course, Native American kids, too, at the bottom of Black and Hispanic kids, where most of the time they don't even get a number, they get an asterisk, which just goes to show how severe the debt really goes, how severe the treatment really went. But almost like it's a self-perpetuating vicious cycle. Systemic racism in the United States is so pervasive that it touches every facet of life. It touches healthcare, it touches law enforcement. Why wouldn't it touch education? In a capitalist nation, you need winners and losers. In a white supremacist capitalist society, you need winners and losers. More specifically, you need brown losers. And so I'm not surprised that the system is doing a good job of perpetuating itself by excluding Black and brown people from higher education by ways of money.
Fortunately, here at SIUE, I feel that I am greatly supported by my campus, faculty, and staff. I've never had the issue with feeling unwelcomed here, but that's not the case for most students.
As a freshman, I lived in the oldest dorms on campus. It was called Ruby Hall. And it was a nice building. I thought it was a nice building. Like, it's still a great building. WashU gets consistently rated as like 1 and 2 for like housing by the Princeton Review. There were buildings on campus that were far more modern, far newer, and honestly had a lot more amenities than mine. And every now and then folks would jokingly, you know, when we would ask each other and you're meeting each other, like, oh, where do you live on campus? Where do you live on campus? And folks would jokingly say, when I said, I live in Ruby Hall, they would respond, oh, you live in the projects. Excuse me?
Or are these folks like African American?
Mostly not African Americans, but just by the nature of the comment, you could probably guess like what the home life or like where they're coming from, what kind of areas they're coming from. Because if you've ever even gotten to like drive past the projects, you probably wouldn't call any of the housing at, you know, a top tier PWI, the projects.
Many of the colleges that report high Black student graduation have reported that they have set orientation and retention programs to tend to their minority students.
I think that 3 years ago, my school was still overwhelmingly on the side of diversity as something great in a brochure. And over these past 3 years, we've been having better and better conversations around diversity as not just something that happens that you just try to aim for to make it look good on a pamphlet or look good in a standing, but you should want to be around people that aren't all the same as you. I think that a lot of higher level institutions are not supportive of their minority populations. I think that it becomes difficult for minorities to thrive. I think it's less a case that minority students have a hard time pursuing higher education, so much as it's higher education has a hard time supporting its minority students.
So there you have it. Minority students really do have it hard when it comes to higher education. And I didn't do this to throw a pity party. And I also didn't do this to create envy amongst those that are privileged. I did this to inform. I'm not bashing white students for being more privileged than minorities, and I'm not encouraging Black students to envy white students for being more privileged than minorities. Not all white people are privileged, and not all Black people are struggling. No, it's not fair, but it's not our fault. And it's not your fault either. However, if we continue to not do anything about it and point the blame, it becomes everyone's fault.